Great. Thank you, everybody, for joining our October SAP BTP Garage call. I'm excited to have you guys all in the call today. If you're joining us for the very first time, welcome. If you're joining us again, welcome back. It's great to have you guys here. For our session today, we're focusing on how you can build custom, Joule skills for SAP systems and also non-SAP systems or external systems using Joule Studio. This is the mission we're going to be covering. I will include a link to that in the chat in just a second once I'm done presenting. The call is being recorded, so we will make the recording available on our SAP BTP Garage playlist. Usually it takes around 48 hours for that to be live, but I will also share the playlist link, and also once the recording is live, I will share the recording link in this chat again in just a couple of days, so you can keep an eye out for that. The speakers in our call today, we have three. So this morning we also already had our call for APJ, and Charlene Zhang gave that call with some help from Sean David in the background to answer questions. And Charlene and Sean are both on the COE team. They've been on the team for about a year, both of them. So we're welcoming them back into the call. And then also this time we have Ashok, who's also an SAP leader with more than 16 years of experience. He's leading the SAP BTP team for SAP Max Attention in North America. And I'm excited to have them all here to present the mission for you, because they're also the experts behind the mission. So they're also the ones who created all of the resources and the project board. So thank you to them for joining us today. In addition to the SAP Garage, which is our virtual format, we do also have hands-on workshops. These are mainly targeted for partners. So you can find what's upcoming. We used to share the links here in the call, but there actually now is a featured events section on SAP Discovery Center. So you can navigate to that just at the very top of the Discovery Center homepage, where you can find all of the details about the workshops and also the registration. That's kind of all from me for the housekeeping. We will have Q&A at the end of the call. You can ask the questions as the presentation is ongoing, but we will have time at the end to also address those where you can just unmute your mic and ask the experts themselves. So with that, I will hand over to Ashok. Thank you for joining and looking forward to the call.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll quickly share my screen, Cecily. And let me know if you guys can see it.
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. Okay, a warm welcome from my side, and nice to be part of this series to present on Joule Studio and how you can, use Joule Studio to build custom skills and agents. And the usual disclaimer, of course. So the agenda that we have, we'll quickly walk through, what challenge does Joule Studio attempt to address, and what is Joule Studio, of course. We'll look at the capabilities on a high level, what you can build with it. And then the main star attention in the session is going to be around the Discovery Center mission, right? Like how, following this mission, you will be able to build custom skills on accessing, data from your SAP systems, and also importantly, non-SAP systems. And we'll talk about, what other customers are doing in this space, maybe one example, and some patterns, and then Q&A. Okay. So, this is SAP Business AI. I think you may have seen this in the past. It has the hamburger layers with Joule and agents on the top. Embedded AI functionalities offered out of S4 and other LLB cloud solutions in the middle. And then the technical layer enabling everything possible is through AI Foundation. And it's no secret that Joule comes with standard delivered about 1,400 or 1,600 plus skills as we speak, across SAP, S4HANA, Concur, Ariba, Fieldglass, so on and so forth. And now we're also releasing standard agents. And the idea is, on top of the standard delivered skills and agents, that you as a customer should be able to build your own skills and agents using Joule Studio. So that's basically what our mission is about. And key challenges, if we see, up until the release of Joule Studio, which was, let's say, 2.5 months back, there was no way for our customers to build custom skills. So what they got from SAP as part of the standard skill catalog was what they get. There's no ability to add new skills, extend them, so on and so forth. So limited or no availability of ability to extend Joule was the main challenge. And oftentimes it's not very easy for organizations to build consistent AI experience, whether it is skill or an agent across multiple systems. That's like another part. And then business users want something, but then there's a longer turnaround because they have to now convey this to IT, and IT have to figure out what tool to use, how to build this AI functionality, how to deliver it to the business users. So there's no set path, and leading to higher, time to value aspect. And then all of this, right from figuring out the tool to ability to build this, release it, run them, operate them, all leading to higher, cost of ownership and a lot of friction. So that's where Joule Studio comes in. So it's largely based on SAP Build. So if you're familiar with the SAP Build lobby, whether it is for build apps or build process automation or build code, this might be a familiar territory to you. It's primarily based on SAP Build process automation. So it's basically low code, no code, citizen developer friendly tool, and using which you can build custom skills and agents. The skill part is live as we speak, and the agents will be live or will be going GA in December. And largely drag and drop is where you would spend most of your time. Of course, you have access to your business systems through destinations, which Sean will walk through how to access backend system ES5, and also a cloud system. Maybe in this case we use Notwing. And because we said it's based on build, which today as we speak you can use for building workflows, building mobile applications, CAP, UI5 applications, Fiori, ABAP cloud projects, and so on. So on top of the existing build, family of capabilities, you are getting these three, which is ability to build agents, skills, and embed Joule into work zone, and then basically where you create your user experience site and access all of them seamlessly from there. Okay, and the reason why we see Joule Studio being a game changer is it's built on top of build. Build is something that most BTP customers are already familiar with, and you use the same build lobby to go and create your projects. So in terms of accessing and reaching other build artifacts, it's all in the same place. So there's familiarity in terms of tools, and the authorizations and other aspects already taken care of. And you can very seamlessly ground this with your own business data, whether it is coming from HANA Cloud or a file-based store, external systems, SAP backend, SAP cloud systems, BTP data sources, whatever be it. You're just a destination away from being able to tap into those data sources when you're building your custom skills and agents. The other important aspect is it is open and interoperable with many things with regard to BTP, and you are able to access and tap into other SAP build process automation artifacts. Like in the past, you may have built actions project, you may have built processes, forms. You are able to bring those into your skill. So at a particular step of the skill, you may want to trigger a workflow or an automation, or you want to send it for approval, or you want to have the user provide approve or reject directly as part of a conversation. You can model all of them directly by leveraging your existing BP artifacts. And whatever your other peer developers build is all available for you to consume. So there's also this element of modularization. There's this element of reuse already built in within Joule Studio. And security and compliance in place as well. So there is, role-based access in terms of who gets to build and administer and run. Again, this piggybacks on top of existing build SAP Build's governance aspect. Right from the access control to ability to build, transporting this, monitoring, logging, lifecycle management, all of that stuff is based on build. So you have nothing to reinvent the wheel again. And from the functionality standpoint, you're able to build custom skills and agents, and within that, you can call like processes, you can call an action, nothing but calling an API. You can call an automation, maybe at a particular part of the conversation or part of an agent's execution. You want to trigger an automation. You want to send messages like to the user, maybe an intermediate message or an end result message. You can call another skill. So one skill or one agent, you can call another skill or another agent. So there's a lot that you can do within that, and we will show that in detail during this walkthrough. In terms of roadmap, we are, I would say, somewhere here. If I were to plot October, we 2 months back, or month and a half back, we went live with the skill builder within Joule Studio. So it's GA. And that's also the time we went in the beta for Agent Builder. Currently, customers who have signed up for the early adopter care are getting guidance from SAP in being able to realize custom agents. The agent enrollment is closed for now. The existing enrolled participants, customers are already in flight in terms of using agents. But the agent will be going live, somewhere early December, from what I'm seeing, hearing from our product management team. So bottom line, by December, you would have Joule Studio giving you the ability to build skills and agents. So right now, the focus of our mission is on the skill development, focusing on, SAP backend and a non-SAP system. So this is what we will show in our mission. Now, within Joule Studio, what are the two things? Like I said, you could build skills and agents. What is a skill? Let's look at that. So skill is often, very deterministic, and it follows a set path no matter how many times you run. And at the design time, you define as to what the sequence of execution should be. So, for example, you want to say, what is the status of my order? So in the design time, you have to model like where does it start, with what parameters or inputs the skill start, and what is the branching, and which system is it going to call, what filter is it going to apply, how is it going to get the response, how is it going to fabricate or assemble the response and present it to the user, right? So everything about this is deterministic. It follows a predefined path, and you may end up doing like chained calls, multiple calls, different branching and whatnot. And bottom line, we end up at a solution. Either we stop or terminate with some errors or exceptions in the middle of we processing this, or we come back at a solution, and then we present the response to the user, right? An example, the way for you to internalize this could be, think of you saying, tell me exactly what to do and I'll do it. So that's basically what Joule skill is, right? You in the design time have to tell what to do, how to do, and it's going to do that for you based on what you've modeled and defined in your design time. And an agent is completely, different. In this case, think of agent being, tell me the problem and I'll go figure out the solution and solve it for you. So what does that mean? An agent is often, autonomous and non-deterministic. So you don't actually say how to get the response, which sequence to follow, which API to call first. If something fails, how to retry, how to incorporate the feedback, all of that stuff. It's almost, think of an analogy where you have 3 or 4 subject matter experts, send them into a meeting room and give them a problem statement and tell them, come out of the room with a solution. You're not going to tell them who is going to cover what part of the problem. You're just going to give them maybe a sheet of paper telling them what the problem statement is and what is the outcome you're looking at. And you're leaving it to the experts. In this case, the 4 SMEs, you're sending it into the meeting room to discuss, deliberate, come to a consensus on what to do first, what approach to follow, what is the fallback mechanism, and then how to come to the solution. Right? A crude analogy, but that kind of explains what an agent is. So in agents, we create tools. Tools become these SMEs. Like, tools can be an API to a business system, maybe your S4 data or local data in HANA Cloud, external data, documents, the public web, weather APIs, anything you can think of can be a tool. And then you have the instructions, which then orchestrates how the tool is being applied or utilized, right? So the example here can be, think of like, saying, analyze the order delays, and then suggest the alternate shipping routes and also notify the customer. So there's different parts to it. And unlike the skill, we are not going to define like, okay, what API to call to get the orders, how to find out even the delays, and how to find out optimal alternate shipping routes. We're not going to say all of that to the agent. The agent is going to figure out based on we providing the right tools, aka data sources or APIs for it to figure out. And with coming back to skills, that's one is going to be our missions focus. You can build different types of skills. It can be like a navigation skill. For example, the user may want to ask something and then have the Joule help the user navigate to the target. It could be a list of apps. It could be a list of objects, like let's say a list of customers, partners, materials, orders, whatever you can think of. And then you narrow down to the list, and then you navigate into that and see the details and do some stuff. You can also do transactions, like not just get, show me this, show me that. You can also do transactions, meaning you can say create this, update this, delete this, in addition to read slash get, show it to you. You can also do decision aspect into it. So you can have Joule take decisions as part of business rules. Again, that's where the build process automation artifacts come into play. So you can model your rule conditions and have Joule decide the conditional aspect based on existing business rules that you model within BPA, build process automation. You can also have it access data, like I said, whether it is documents, document management service in BTP or external data sources, your, S3, HANA Cloud, anything you can think of, you can, access the data and build skills on top of it. And finally, you can also have your Joule initiate workflow, and I would go a step further and say even automations within, as part of your Joule skill. So what we've done as part of, the Joule Studio mission here is we have this cards with comprehensive steps, right from telling you what the mission's goal is. Like if you were to start this mission, what is that you're going to achieve at the end of the mission? Let's say you spend 3-4 hours, and understand the basics of some of these things that you'll be dealing with as part of the mission. How to set up your landscape. What are the prerequisites from a licensing standpoint? If you were to, let's say, go into your company or BTP sub account and set it up, how to do that. And then the most important part, which is how to actually create the actual artifacts to complete the mission, like creating, the projects, the skills, the connections, the actions project, destinations, troubleshooting, deploying, all of those things, well documented in this mission. To talk more about the mission, explain individual cards and the steps, the instructions, and the demo, I call upon Sean from my team. Sean, over to you. I'll stop sharing. You can share your.
Yeah, thanks, Ashok. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen here. So
Yeah,
I've just pulled up the project board of the mission. Again, this is what Ashok was just showing you. So as he said, we have these different sections here that we've laid out that takes you step by step through how to, all the way from how to set up Joule Studio within your BTP landscape, all the way to creating your custom Joule skills and then eventually deploying it to your different environments. So this first section here, as he said, just learns about the mission goal and then some optional learnings about AI, SAP build, and Joule here. So just some optional learning here. Next is this prepare column, which will walk you through kind of the setup of Joule Studio within your BTP landscape. So in this card, for example, we go a little bit in the prerequisites. We'll go a little bit more into the prerequisites after we walk through the mission here. But once the prerequisites are all there, the following cards then walk you through setting up the booster in Joule, which will walk you through a step of process steps to integrate Joule within your landscape and have Joule Studio set up, and then finally assigning specific roles and attributes to your user that's necessary to utilize the platform. Now we'll start to get into the actual setup of these artifacts that you'll need to create these Joule skills. So for this mission, there's actually going to be two different data sources that we're utilizing that will first create destinations in BTP for. The first is our representative of our non-SAP system. So this is going to be the Northwind database. It's just basically a public database here that you're able to go into. It has a lot of different entities, for example. So for example, if I want to see any sample data on customer orders, it has that available that we're able to go into it and read some data. The other one representing our SAP system is ES5. So if you're unfamiliar, ES5 is our gateway demo system. So it is available as well. All you need to do is create an account and then you'll be able to have access to this system. And then similar to Northwind, it has an API for access where you can go ahead and go into the data as well and read that. So again, the first step of what we do in this mission is set up some configurations to these data sources so that in your custom Joule skills, you are able to connect to it and read the data from both of them. So again, that's going to be one destination for the Northwind, which is going to be our non-SAP system in this scenario, and then one destination for ES5, which is going to act as our SAP connected system. After that, the next main step is to create these action projects. So Ashok mentioned these before. Action projects are a feature that's kind of incorporated into SAP Build as a whole. So if you're familiar with using SAP Build process automation, you may have used these action projects before. Essentially, they're just wrappers around different API calls to different systems. You can create them by linking your destinations that I just spoke about in BTP to SAP Build, and then it will create what's called actions based off of that. So if I go into my system here, you can see there's a whole kind of section for different action projects you can create. And then here's one that we've created for the mission itself. So I mentioned we're using Northwind here. So when you connect your Northwind destination, you're able to add different actions to your action projects. As you can see here, these are just simple API calls here that I've added, which again, the mission will walk you through step by step how to add these specific calls here. You can go in here, and if I test, for example, with a customer that I know, you'll be able to see that I get the data as simple as a regular API call. And then this is what we'll use in the actual custom Joule skill that we'll be using. So again, your custom Joule skill will be calling upon these actions to get any access to your data sources that you can then call with different APIs there. So that handles kind of how the action projects works. So now I can finally get into how to create an actual project within Joule Studio and then our custom Joule skills here. So I'll go ahead and start within the SAP Build lobby for that. As we mentioned, Joule Studio is a part of the SAP Build family. So if you're familiar with using SAP Build apps, SAP Build Code, SAP Build Process Automation, it will be accessed once you enable it with the prerequisites in the same exact way through the SAP Build lobby. So if I go here in the build lobby and I hit create, once you have Joule Studio enabled, you will see this Joule skill objective whenever you try and create a project. So all you have to do is hit next there, give it a name, and it'll automatically create a project for you that you can see here. It'll be listed alongside any other build projects that you have had already in the past. So I'll go ahead and just open up a project that we had created for the mission. Here you can see your different artifacts you've created. As you mentioned, Joule Studio, you'll be able to create both Joule skills and AI agents. For this mission alone, since it is generally available right now, we're just going to be focused on the Joule skills portion. So to do that, you'll hit create here, and then you'll have an option for Joule skill, or where you can then give it any name that you'd like to give it and a description. One point to note here is that the name and description are going to be a little bit important here whenever you create a new Joule skill, as that's how Joule is able to recognize which skill to trigger. So it takes whatever message you get and then it maps it to whatever name and description you have it to make sure that it's triggering the correct skill in your custom scenarios there. So again, throughout this mission, you'll be creating various Joule skills. So if I go back to the mission card, you can see that there's a lot of different cards to create different steps. In total, it's going to be 4 custom Joule skills. For the sake of time, I'll just focus on one of them that has a bit of conditions so we can go through all the different functionalities inside a custom Joule skill that we can implement. So the one we'll look at here is this retrieve customer order details. As the name suggests, what it does is that it'll go into your system, it'll access the data like we've seen before with the APIs, and it'll fetch those details for a specific customer to get any orders that they may have placed. So once I click into this, it'll take me into the skill editor. Again, if you're familiar with SAP Build, you may recognize the layout of the editor once it pops up here. It is this, again, low code or no code environment here that you're able to kind of just click around to configure different things. You can click here to add different steps and all. So we'll go step by step into what each of these features does. So the first one here is the trigger. The trigger fires whenever the scenario is called. Again, that's going to be based off of whenever Joule believes this is the correct skill to call based off of whatever message you give it and based off of the name and description that were supplied here, which you can then again change here if you need to. There's going to be two toggles here, one that allows Joule to actually generate a response on your behalf. You can keep that on if you'd like, or you can turn it off if you'd like to send your own type of message. You can also allow your skill to be started directly by a user, or if you'd like it to just be embedded in another flow, for example, like another Joule skill, you can also turn this off as well if you'd like. You can also configure any different parameters that you may want for your Joule skill here, so any inputs. So for this Joule skill, I want to be retrieving orders based off of a specific customer ID. So I want to let Joule know that I need to provide this ID here so it knows which customer to specifically look for. And then any skill outputs, if you want anything to be returned from your skill, for example, if it's embedded within another flow and you need a specific object returned from the skill, you can configure any outputs here and then map it later on in the process. From there, the next main step that we're going to add is this action step. So this is going to be related to the action projects that I spoke about previously, the wrappers around your different APIs. Here you can provide even more inputs to the API itself. So if you saw in the action project view, I'm able to test with all these different parameters here. I can also supply them here in my Joule skill. For example, if I want to add a count parameter to only get a specific amount of records back from my database, I can do so here. Once I click that, it opens up this skill content page where I'm able to map different inputs like my customer ID. For example, if I had a customer ID field, which I have one lower there, I can map that directly into there. But if I had, another field for the count of records, I can also map that into here. And I can also open up what's called this formula editor. So if I have any inputs or any parameters from other parts of my skill that I want to maybe edit in some way for data, for example, if I have a number that is needs to be turned into a string, I can go ahead and add this function in here, which will do that for me. So there's a lot of different functions embedded in this formula editor that you can do some data manipulation on in case you need it. So like I mentioned at the bottom here, I have this customer ID field required for my API or my action call. So all I've done here is I've taken this skill input that I configured before and I've mapped that here. So whenever I call Joule to trigger the skill, I'm going to supply this specific customer ID. It's going to take my skill input and map it into here for this action call back to my data source. And then finally, this is just going to be configured in the action project itself. So there's not going to be any editing on this end, but this is just going to be what I'm expecting to come back from this action. And again, if you need to add different steps within your skills workflow, you're going to basically just add this or press this add step button that's between any of the steps that are already there. And there's a variety of different things that you can add. So Ashok mentioned earlier that you are able to kick off different processes and automations from within Joule Skills. So you can utilize these here. And if you have any existing content from SAP Build Process Automation, you can leverage that in these situations. The call action step is what we just went through. That'll call our action project to make API calls to any systems or destinations that we have set up. This send response or send message you might see in your systems is just going to be if you want to configure any specific text or any specific format that you want Joule to respond in. Launch Joule skill basically triggers another Joule skill from within this workflow. In check condition allows you to have branching logic, which we'll look at right now. So if I open up this condition, you can see I have two different branches here, one for if this condition is true, the other one for if this condition is not true. So again, thinking back to our use case here, we're trying to retrieve customer orders based off of a specific ID. So if I go to my condition step and I open up the condition editor here, the condition I have here is if the value, which the value is actually going to be the data that we have coming back from our action project here, is greater than 0. So that basically means if I have any data coming back from my system, I want to show that there's been order data received, versus if I have no data coming back from my system here, I want it to go into this branch. This is basically telling me whether or not my customer ID that I put in is valid or not. I can have Joule respond differently in both of those scenarios. So if my customer ID was valid and I did receive some orders, I can use the send response step in order to configure my own custom message. As I showed at the beginning, I don't have to configure this by hand if I don't want to. I just do it in this mission so that we can show you how we can map the data correctly in the case that you want to create a custom message. But as I showed in the trigger step, you can have Joule also auto-generate a message based off of whatever data that you're handling in the skill itself, if you prefer to do that. But again, this is a custom configured message that you can have a lot of different types to. So we'll look at the illustrated message next. You can have plain text or a simple card here. What we have set up here is a list, so you can display all of your order data in a specific list here. If you'd like, you can do specific data mapping. So if I open up this context tab here, you can see that I am able to access the output of our action project here and map it directly to my list message. So this is a preview of what that list message will look like, which we'll see in more detail once we get to the deploy step. And then I can go in even further and add any additional details here. So if I want to, I can go into the actions again. I can see the result that's coming back. I can take a look at all the different fields here that will be returned by my API call, and I can put in any single field that I'd like to show within my message itself. And then on the flip side, if the customer ID is invalid and I want to show some kind of simple error message, I can do so as well. So if I open up this message editor here, like I mentioned, I'm going to be using the illustrated message in this case. I have a specific title saying there's no customer orders found. So this basically lets me know that the skill did trigger, but I'm not getting any data or records existing for the specified customer. It could be it could be the customer ID that's wrong. And then I basically have a simple illustration showing me that there's no data being found by Joule. So that lets me know that my skill is triggering properly. It just might be that I supplied a wrong customer ID or that customer does not have any data in the system. And then once that's finished, you get to the end step here. This is where your skill triggering will end. This is where the workflow will end, and this is where Joule will respond with either these messages here, or if there's any other skill outputs that you've defined, they will get mapped into here. So that's just that basic skill workflow for going into your system, retrieving customer orders, and displaying it back to the user based off of whether data was actually found or no data was found at all. So again, a very simple workflow to add, and again, step-by-step instructions will be included in the mission itself. After you're done creating your skill workflow, once you're satisfied with all of the different steps that you've added, the next step to do is to release and deploy your skill. So by release, what I mean here is that creates a version within SAP build for that specific workflow that you've created. So you can see when I hit release here, It does have numbering automatically there. It's based off of whatever type of change that you pick here. So you can see the release version will change. So whatever you feel is best to represent what changes you've made to your skill, you can click that here and put release notes, and then you can hit release. We already have kind of a released version. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to that to show you what that looks like. Basically, this puts it in a state where you're not able to edit it, but you can always switch back to an editable state if you need to make any changes. Once it's released and set as a version, you can go ahead to deploy here, and you can pick an environment that you'd like to deploy it to. Now, there's two main options when it comes to environment. There is one that is a standalone environment, as you can see here. This is good if you want to mainly just test your Joule skills. So let's take a look at what that looks like right now. So this is a standalone environment. If you're familiar with interacting with Joule at all with the web client, this will look very familiar. It's just going to be that standard web client that's not, but in this case, it's not embedded in any other solution. It's not connected to anything, but I can go ahead and test my custom Joule skill. So if I want to see if I can retrieve customer order data for that specific customer I tested before, I can go ahead and send that to Joule. It'll take some time to process here. But once it does, we should get a message that looks similar to what we've seen before. As you see, it didn't fire right here right away, but that's okay. That in the case that this happens, you can actually go into this button up here in the top right corner. This will actually give you some logs. So if your Joule skill isn't performing as expected, you can actually go into here into the logs itself. It'll tell you exactly what Joule has done, which is really handy if you're troubleshooting your custom skills here. So we can see that Joule had selected the correct scenario here to retrieve my customer order details. It did start it correctly here. And it seems like all it did was just timed out. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it just times out. So really what you want to do is you can refresh it. You can try again. So I'll go ahead and I'll try this one again. We'll see if it works this time, but I can also bring up this kind of older version here that I have to kind of show that it did work before. So here's that same prompt that I just tried here. And then here's the message that I walked through in configuration for that list. So you can see it shows me a lot of different order IDs. If I click this, it populates additional details here based off of those orders. And again, this was a custom message that I allowed Joule to respond with. But if I want to, I can have Joule automatically respond. And I also tried out a different prompt here with a customer that I know does not exist. Here, it even confirms it for me. This is probably because Joule did an initial check and it realized that there wasn't any customer with this ID. But once I confirmed it, it shows me that error message that I configured into that system there. So again, that is the standalone environment that's not connected to anything. Once you are already satisfied with how it works, once you think it's working correctly, you can go ahead and deploy to a shared environment here. So when you deploy to a shared environment, it will actually tell you that the shared environment does take longer to deploy because you'll be deploying that to actually your unified Joule. So you'll be able to access that from within any LOB solution that you have Joule enabled. For example, like SAP Build Work Zone, S4, SuccessFactors, you'll be able to access it in any of those integrated solutions here. So we have it integrated within our SAP Build Work Zone. So I'll go ahead and I'll log in to this Launchpad page within our SAP Build Work Zone. As you can see here, we do have Joule enabled. So if I open that, you'll see that familiar Joule client here. You can see this is something that I put in earlier today to test that this skill works. We'll try it again with another conversation. So once it loads, you can see here that along with, being able to message Joule, you actually see these little pop-ups here. These are the Joule standard skills that come out of the box with Joule. So we can see that we can also interface with our own custom skills while we are in this client. So it's going to go ahead. It's going to take this prompt and will process. It looks like it's not firing here as well. So again, I can go into logs here. It just seems like it's timing out right now. Due to that, that's okay. But again, if I want to, I can just show you again that it worked kind of earlier as well. So I'm able to retrieve this customer data here. I can see the different list here. Because it's a smaller pane here, the list just kind of goes into a different tab there. There's some other Joule skills here that, for example, this suppliers one is also one that the mission walks through as well. So once you do the mission, you'll be able to see this as well to retrieve different suppliers and other types of data from your source systems. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the mission. Again, it walks through how to do all of this from end to end, from setting up all the way to creating those Joule skills in the step-by-step processes, to releasing and deploying your Joule skills to both that standalone Joule instance and that shared environment. So I'll pass it back to Ashok now to kind of just, again, repeat these prerequisites and go over some customer scenarios that we usually see Joule Studio utilized in. So back to you, Ashok.
Ashok? Over to you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, Ashok,
You're
I think you're
muted.
muted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ashok? Maybe he can't hear us. Well,
Yeah, maybe he can't. I can go ahead.
maybe while
I'll
we
go
wait.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go ahead and present those last few slides then for him, just in case he
Okay, awesome.
just can't hear. No worries. So I will just share my screen again, and then if he can jump into once he gets back in. So yeah, let me share my screen again.
Oh, he's answering though.
Okay. Sorry, trying to share my screen. It's not going well either. Give me one sec. Okay, there we go. So again, here are some of the prerequisites that we have for Joule Studio. We mentioned this again at the start of the mission, but some additional details here. So Joule Studio does require this enterprise BTP account. So I think I saw a message in the chat earlier that BTP trial does not include a plan for Joule Studio here. So you're going to need either this CPEA, BTPEA, or subscription with a specific build SKU in order to use Joule Studio. And you'll also need the Joule entitlement there. And then just real quickly, some customer scenarios that we mainly see Joule Studio used in. That's going to be scenario one, where you have Joule set up for a LOB solution already, like S4, SuccessFactors, or Concur, and you already are using these standard out-of-the-box Joule skills, and you want to provide more additional Joule skills that looks like Ashok. Hey, Ashok, are you back? Hello? You're muted
on
right now,
mute.
Ashok. I think you're muted right now, Ashok. Just in case you can't hear us, put that in the chat there.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if it's Sean, it's in your end or my hand. Um, okay, are we good with that, or did I get this screen back with early?
Yeah, no,
Before?
you're good. You're good.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Cool. Okay, so now that we've seen the mission, let's quickly look at the prerequisites. Like if we were to start licensing wise and other things, what you should have. You should have the, of course, the BTP license with the right, sub account model and whatnot. And regardless of the type of license you have, whether it is BTP CPA or BTP EA or subscription, you need to have this build developer license. This particular SKU, this is important for you to set up Joule Studio. And then, of course, to deploy whatever you're building in Joule Studio, you need to have the Joule entitlement as well to deploy this into end consumer eventually. Quickly looking at customer scenarios, well, I'll go to one of the examples that we did recently for another customer.
Ashok, are you sharing any slides? We're not seeing them.
I am sharing my screen. You're not seeing it. Okay,
It's
let me
just
share again.
blank. Yeah.
Let me share again. Okay, my laptop is acting a bit weird. Sean, can you bring up the slides, please? Sean, can you bring up the slides?
There we go. Now we see prerequisites for Joule Studio.
Sean, you're on mute.
Yeah. Okay, so I think my Teams is out of sync, so I'll just go by what I'm seeing on my phone. Yeah, we just finished the prerequisite. Sean, if you can go to the next slide. And yeah, let's go to the scenarios. So this is not a particular customer example, but this is more of like, how can you start thinking?
Oh no, Ashok, we've lost you. Your audio is cutting in and out.
I think Ashok dropped out. Sean, do you want to take it over?
Yeah, I can take it back over. No worries. So yeah, so as we were saying before, there's two kind of main scenarios we see here for when Joule Studio can be applied. Again, if you have Joule set up for any LOB solutions like S4, SuccessFactors, Concur, you're already using these pre-delivered out of the box standard Joule skills, and you want to use additional skills for your business users to consume, then you can utilize Joule Studio to create these custom Joule skills connected to these like standard APIs that are already being used to interact with these systems and deploy them as well so that you can have these additional capabilities. Scenario two, you have custom or extension apps that are built and deployed on SAP BTP. Because these are custom apps, they obviously don't have any standard Joule skills to interact with them. But if you want to promote any user interaction that's Joule based for your business users, you can go ahead and create custom apps that'll connect to these or custom skills that'll connect to these applications for you, which will then allow your users to interact with those apps directly within the Joule web client in any of those, again, LOB-based solutions that you have Joule activated in. So those are kind of the two main scenarios that we see. Here's an example of one that we've done for a customer recently. So this customer had Joule set up with SAP S/4HANA and the SuccessFactors system. They had a custom app built within SAP BTP for managing their letter of credit processes. So that's going to be managing and viewing their invoices, their different statuses, their payments. They had custom applications set up where users can go in, view all the different types of data, do different transactions with that data, but they want to extend that so that users can go ahead and ask Joule to present this data directly to them, that they can kick off interactions with Joule, based off of wherever they were within, their launchpad like SAP Build Workzone or S/4HANA or SuccessFactors. So what we've done is that we worked together and we made some custom Joule skills to enable these business users to interact with their custom app through Joule, enabling this natural language-based interaction within the app so they were able to query different types of, views or breakdowns of their data. They're able to go ahead and see all of the different tables that they would regularly see in the apps within Joule itself there. So some key takeaways from this entire session is that we have Joule Studio as this unified generative AI development platform where you're able to build, test, and deploy custom Joule skills, and in the future, multi-step AI agents across these SAP and non-SAP systems, all within one environment. This is done within this low-code and no-code type editor, which allows both business and technical users to create these AI-driven apps, processes, workflows, and skills without reinventing any connectivity or security concepts. And there's this seamless enterprise integration orchestration, which allows you to leverage existing SAP BTP services, data, and security models to orchestrate these business processes. So again, here's just a link to the mission. I'm pretty sure it was also sent in the chat as well. But in case you need that here's the link and a QR code that leads you right to our mission. With that, we'll go ahead and we can take some questions now for Q&A.
So I think most have been covered in the chat. One just came in though, which is, can a Joule skill be transported from a non-productive Joule instance to a productive instance?
Yeah, so that's actually built
can,
into, so that's built into Joule Studio.
It's
there
part
is
of SAP
SAP
Build,
Build.
like you can transport artifacts. Yeah.
Awesome. I think most of the others have been. So if you haven't asked any questions yet, go ahead and just pop them in the chat, or also feel free to unmute yourselves.
Yeah, sorry about my audio. I think I got muted with no option for me to unmute. I'm not sure it was on my end or Teams played a part.
For agentic AI scenarios, do we have to wait for the second half of the year?
Yes, so the standard delivered agents are released by SAP like almost on a daily basis, I would say, including a whole bunch that was announced yesterday in SAP Connect in Las Vegas. And the ability to build custom agents is planned first or second week of December, as of now. That's the plan. So the same Joule Studio now, you were able to build skill. You will also see an additional option to also create agent. So we are working on another Discovery Center mission to coincide along the general availability release, and hopefully, Cicely, we have a session on that somewhere down the line.
Perfect. Can you please share the TDDs of the partner SKUs as well?
Yeah, I can put that in the chat.
Awesome. Are AI units consumed when Joule triggers a custom skill?
AI units, yeah. Whatever metering or whatever licensing model that you have will kick in.
Can we get to know the latest SAP AI agents or skill use cases from SAP if we have any for SAP on-prem customers?
Can we know the latest SAP AI agents and skill use cases on SAP? For on-prem, no, unless in fact, Joule is not even available for on-prem. So most of the stuff, I think the minimum requirement would be RISE, be it private cloud or public cloud, as we speak.
Is there help or an estimator for sizing AI units required?
Yeah, within the Discovery Center, you can do sizing for AI units. Yeah.
Yeah, Melissa, from the homepage of Discovery Center, if you click on AI estimator, underneath the SAP Business AI catalog, you'll see a link for AI estimator.
Can we, as a partner company, try this for free? I'm not expert on that space as to what is the model for partners. I'm sure there's SAP partner management and other channels. Probably I would recommend to explore in that channel.
Can we call the Joule skill within an existing Fiori app, custom or standard app?
Again, it's not something that you embed into an app per se, but you embed this into either a Fiori launchpad on the, let's say, the S4, or WorkZone in BTP, or other LOB cloud solutions homepages. So you can sort of get there, but then you need to, it needs to be either on a Fiori launchpad or on WorkZone in the context. But not necessarily a standalone Fiori app that you build. You cannot embed this as a chatbot within. And I think I answered that in relation to another question in the chat as well. Okay, any other questions?
Not that I see so far. You guys have done a good job. Our background support, you guys are working hard. Okay, can we use Joule to create iFlows from a tech spec?
Not in what we have seen here, but within the, I'm sure you're talking about iFlows in the integration space. You have the ability to generate that if you have the premium tenant of the integration suite. So you can also create Groovy scripts in the integration space based on prompts. So yeah, there are some developer productivity and quality or enhancement aspect inbuilt there, but not as part of Joule Studio per se. It's something that's natively available in Integration Suite, like you have the Joule for developers.
I don't see the new SAP build entitlement in my CPA entitlements. Does this need to be added on?
I'm not sure. Build developer plan is part of CPA. I know that for sure. It just was added like a week and a half back. I would recommend you checking with the accounting, or if you have a BTP CSP assigned, probably check with them. Licensing folks.
Okay. And one is showing a screenshot of an architecture diagram, which seems to indicate that on-prem S4 is eligible for Joule now.
So you have to understand this in the context that it is showing to call an API coming from S4 on-prem or ECC or even third-party system. You have to look at it in that context, and not necessarily to interpret it as Joule is available for S4 on-prem. There's subtle difference there. You can build custom skills on top of APIs coming from S4 on-prem or any system for that matter. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. For the customer use case shown in this session, is it an S4 on-prem customer or cloud?
ECC, think of it, ECC customer. But then they have built extension applications in BTP, about 5-6 applications. And they wanted the end users of those extension applications, which are like CAP applications running in BTP, they wanted to give those business users enhanced user experience in terms of able to do things in a more efficient manner through conversational user experience. So backend is ECC, and the skill is built based on APIs reaching all the way to the backend ECC and the local CAP applications services.
Awesome. So that was the last one in the chat, and I will probably stop the chat there, but thank you for everybody for engaging and asking your questions. Thank you to our experts for joining the session today and being willing to present the topic and also to engage with the lively discussion we've had. I want to just tease you guys a little bit with what's coming in our Garage episode for November. So as Melissa had asked, what about the cost estimations for AI topics? We will have a session on the 19th of November focused on exactly that. So how can you understand better what the AI offerings are? How does the cost estimator help you? And also, what is some of the strategic guidance available for the AI topics? So with that, I thank everybody again for joining and hope to see you guys again in the garage next time. The recording will be made available on YouTube, and please share the meeting invite or the registration link with anybody else you think these calls would be applicable for. So thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day, morning, evening, wherever you are.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.